This is the art of video games, a new genre of Dark Souls clones. It seems that every time we get a new slew of game announcements, that at least one of them seems to be heavily inspired by Dark Souls. The samurai slasher Nioh has a host of elements clearly lifted from Dark Souls, such as your death marking the spot that you need to return to, and the newly revealed Code Vein also wears its Dark Souls inspiration on its sleeve. However, maybe it's time to stop calling these games clones. Maybe Dark Souls has created a new genre. Back in November of 1993, the legendary first-person shooter Doom released. The technology for the time was mind-blowing, being able to seemingly render fully 3D environments at a high enough frame rate to facilitate adrenaline-fueled action and requiring speedy reflexes to conquer its higher difficulties. Although in fact much of this is trickery, and the game in fact utilises 2D images for its levels and creates different heights using separate height values, in the years that followed, a multitude of games were released that entirely aped the design of Doom. Some had id's blessing, like Heretic and Hexen, however many did not. At the time, it was common for all of them to be labelled as Doom clones. However, by 1997, the genre first-person shooter was finally used more than Doom clone. This marked a pivotal shift in consumer perception and ushered in some healthy competition, pushing first-person shooters into what they are today, an unstoppable juggernaut of a game genre. Dark Souls also may have had this effect on the industry. With its unique tactical action RPG gameplay, Dark Souls has set a new standard for others to be pitched against. While many elements of Dark Souls have been incorporated into this modern influx of punishing action RPGs, one area stands above all else, an area that has single-handedly crushed all that has come before it: combat. Combat design is one of the most fascinating areas of game design, and is constantly one of the most rapidly changing areas of design. At present, two key fundamental ways of approaching melee combat design exist. The first is direct input to action method. Using this method, the player's surroundings, enemies, and general gameplay in the level are irrelevant. Every action that the player can perform is mapped to an exact button or button combination. For example, pressing the square button will always attack in the same way every single time it is pressed. Pressing it 3 times in a row also acts the same way every time, and so on and so forth. A key thing to remember when thinking about combat like this is that combat should be able to be entirely performed on thin air. Hack and slash games like Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance have been utilising combat like this for decades, allowing the player to test and master complex combos without any enemy involvement. However, many much simpler games also use this style of combat, such as Skyrim and 3D platformers like Crash Bandicoot. With this system, targeting may aid, but it is irrelevant to the functionality of the combat. However, when concerning the second method, a dynamic animation-driven system, the player target is paramount. Games constructed in this way usually feature much simpler button layouts, and instead take the simple input and dynamically change the player's attack to match the situation. This is a much more modern approach, and have become the clear choice for action games that require the rest of the controller for other actions. The Batman Arkham series mastered this system, however it can be seen in Assassin's Creed and Uncharted. Notice how with these systems, the combat is unable to function without a target. It may not be shown on screen using any kind of UI, but simply swinging at thin air breaks the combat loop, forcing the game to use a generic miss animation. Make no mistake, it's entirely possible to combine these two styles to create interesting combat designs, utilising soft or hard targeting, and some games even flip between the two during combat. So here we return to Dark Souls, or more accurately, the Soulsborne series. In these games, the combat uses a hard targeting system combined with direct input combat. In addition, it uses clear telegraphs for both the player and enemies. It also uses long attack wind-ups. This combination instantly creates a formula in which the player and the AI are playing the same combat system, and allows for all actions to function in a fair manner across the game. What this really means is, are you able to imagine playing the game as a mob in the world? And when you are doing that, are you able to fight the player in the same way that you would as the player character? For the vast majority of games, this is simply not the case. For many hack and slash games, your attacks would be painfully easy to defend, while the player's attacks could stun lock you from full health to death. In an animation-driven game, not only would you have to wait your turn to attack a player, but you would have no way of defending yourself from any attack unless the player hits your defense directly. Dark Souls creates a level playing field that allows player versus player and player versus environment combat to work off the same rule set. Dark Souls doesn't have an incredibly complex combat system. However, it does have an incredibly satisfying combat system. This is a match made in heaven for an action RPG, as many prefer to focus on other areas of the experience, like character building and storyline. It's paramount that the combat is simple enough to stay within the game's budget. It's for this reason that I fully expect Dark Souls combat to become a mainstay for many action RPGs to come. Its flexibility to adapt and its simplicity to implement versus other combat systems make it a clear choice for a variety of games in the genre. So let's stop calling these games Dark Souls clones and call them a new breed of action RPG that they deserve to be. Thank you for watching. I'm Seb Axel. I hope you enjoyed this episode on all these Dark Souls clones. And what do you think about this new direction for action RPGs? Are you excited where it's going in the future, or are you kind of sick of this Dark Souls style combat? Post your thoughts in the comments below. I think it's great to get a discussion going and take a look at games on a deeper level. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. If you are interested in more things I've talked about, check out my blog. It's linked in the description, and it's geared towards non-gamers too, so link all your friends and families, and come back next week for a new episode.